Hi, my name is Judi Hansen, and I'm the Executive Director for the Wisconsin Center for Nursing. And what I'd like to share with you today is a presentation on the nursing workforce in Wisconsin and the kinds of things we do to address the needs of that workforce both now and also in the future. Okay. So our mission at the Wisconsin Center for Nursing is to assure an adequate, well-prepared, we also use the word competent, and diverse nurse workforce to meet the needs of the people of Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Center for Nursing has quite a history already. It was an idea that was launched on, of all days, September 11, 2001. And it was a bunch of nursing leaders, both academic and practice leaders, who were discussing what a great benefit it would be to have a nursing workforce center in Wisconsin. And we are actually about one of 33 or so in the nation. These are some of the partnerships we have. As you can see, the font is very small, but it gives you an idea of how connected we are to all sorts of stakeholders in Wisconsin. And we don't always just connect with nursing entities. We're very dedicated to stretching our boundaries a little bit and going beyond nursing to business partners or workforce development people, all those kinds of things. These are strategic priorities. We critically analyze and disseminate nursing workforce data, and I'll tell you how we collect that. We strengthen the capacity to bring together nursing interests into one platform, so nurses have a unified voice on workforce issues. And we right now are, as of 2 years ago, leading the Wisconsin initiative on the IOM report, which I know you've heard about. So I'll be talking more about that. My objectives in the presentation today are to list some major trends that are impacting the nursing workforce. I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot of what the current nursing workforce looks like in Wisconsin and look at how we're addressing those needs through our strategic initiatives. And I also want to take the time to tell you about a grant that we just landed through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. All right, first of all, you're probably well aware of this through your studies, but we are facing growing elderly populations. And as baby boomers like myself start to enter into that age group, we're going to need more and more care, and there are going to be many of us. We also are having an increased diversity in our populations in Wisconsin, and that is actually a huge blessing to us because, as you know, diversity is a rich component for making richer workplace settings, with richer educational settings, and just all around a richer cultural element to any demographics. We have an aging healthcare workforce. I'll show you some stats on that. And we also have a serious problem with aging faculty. So the question is then, who is going to be around to prepare the next generation of future nurses? It is potentially an impact on our healthcare reform and how we utilize nurses, and also it's a huge economic driver in our state. So when talking about our population growth, this is how things are projected out by year 2035. All the age groups are kind of normal looking, but you'll look that there is kind of a gap when we look at the middle age, 25 to 44. And we also then notice some rather staggering increases in the population starting at age 65. The most staggering, 85 and over, by the year 2035, we anticipate 132% increase in that population. So again, the question becomes, who's going to care for us, me being one of them? All right, by work setting, this is what is projected through work that is being done at the Department of Workforce Development, the state of Wisconsin, in an office called the Office of Economic Advisors. And these are economists who actually look at what the demand is going to be for nursing based on population projections and what the demographics of the population look like. So, as you can see, nursing home or extended care, we're expecting an 88% change. And then you can look at all the various different settings where nurses might practice. We know that through the IOM report, we know, and through the Affordable Care Act, once all of that is in place, there is going to be a large emphasis on transitional care and community-based care. So part of that whole push is we know the projections by the work settings that exist now, but in truth, we don't know what work settings nurses will all be in. And they may be very, very different than what we're experiencing today. This is a report that was done, publication, Jurashek et al., Models and Forecasts Supply of Nurses. Now, when you think about the nursing workforce, you need to consider three things: supply, what the demand is, and also how we educate them to keep that pipeline supply in place that it's going to meet those needs. They did a study and noticed that there would be shortages in all 50 states, and Wisconsin's grade was a D in terms of how we might be prepared to face a nursing workforce shortage. This is another study done out of the state of Wisconsin, Competitive Wisconsin 2012. By 2018, almost a quarter of all jobs will be in nursing and healthcare, with a 43% increase in those jobs and a 13% increase in the supply of nurses and healthcare professionals. So really what that's telling us is that graduating nurses are in a very good place in terms of job security later on. That may not be so true right now because the economy is holding nurses who are like my age. That's keeping us from retiring. We're staying put for a while. Once that wave of retirement starts, we will be really hitting the bottom in terms of the need for nurses. All right, just a snapshot. This is based on both the 2012 RN survey that was done and the 2011 LPN survey. We also did a 2013 on the LPNs, but that data is not out yet. You probably don't know this yet unless you've got some kind of a nursing license, but RNs and LPNs are required to do a relicensure survey when they renew their license every other year, RNs alternating with LPNs. We are one of a very small number of states that have the good fortune to have that in place in our state so that we can get great workforce data and we can see it trending over time. In 2010, we surveyed almost 78,000 RNs. In 2012 survey, we did about 81,000 nurses. So this is an incredible, rich source of data. And when I go to national meetings, I have to tell you, the other states are really envious of Wisconsin because we've got that in place. It is actually legislated. It's a Wisconsin statute that maintains and mandates that this be done. So you can see some of the stats there. We have about 85% of our workforce is working as an RN, and a little over half of them right now are working in hospitals. That means there's almost another 50% of them that are out in the community in various positions. And this is the type of thing that they expect to shift a little bit as care transitions more into the community. The LPNs is a whole different picture. 86% of them live and work in Wisconsin, but over 1/3 of them are employed in nursing homes. And if you already start to think about what I just mentioned about that population aging, and the LPNs are the ones that are the primary caregivers in those nursing homes, it's going to be a huge, it has staggering impact if we don't have that nursing workforce supported. Only 8.9% in hospitals. Okay, the median age of an RN, 48 years old. And as you can see, there's a nice, kind of a nice bell curve there. But if you can see in those middle brackets, we've got about 15% between 50 and 54, and we've got another 10% between 60 and 64, and then 15% between 55 and 59. So altogether, that's over a third of our workforce in that age bracket. I'd like to see that dip down a little younger, but it hasn't happened yet. All right, 55 and over by work setting. This one is really kind of scary. Academic education. Average age is 53 of a nursing educator, and over 48% of them are over 55. The other place that this also takes its toll is in the public community health nursing field. The average age there is 50, and 39% of them are over 55. The hospital one is where you see that lowest bar. 22.7% are over 55, and the average age is about 43. And people say, well, why is that? Well, the reason that is because younger nurses can take those grueling hours and that grueling work. And so we see those nurses younger in that age, but the problem we face in that workforce is that there's really high job turnover. So retention is the issue that we look at and strategies to improve that. All right, Wisconsin nurses by race and ethnicity. This is where things look very literally pale for Wisconsin. We know we are a very white state, but our nursing profession is even whiter than we are as a whole. And certainly Wisconsin is, as I said, more Caucasian than the nation. But if you look at our Wisconsin RNs, we're 93.5% white. It's creeping up, though, and it's gotten a lot better. And I'm happy to say that in the nursing surveys, the education surveys we've done over the last few years, we actually have, for the first time historically, we have a student population that actually matches the demographics of the public. So as long as we can keep those students moving forward and retain them in the workforce, we'll have a better mix. By gender, we know how bad this is. Female, 93.1%, 6.9% males only in the nursing workforce. The American Assembly of Men in Nursing has a goal, 20% males by 2020. They thought that had a nice ring to it, so they're going with it. All right. We looked at the projection models. It's a tool. It's called a forecasting model tool. And it's a great thing. Again, it's got national recognition. It is out of the Department of Workforce Development, Economic Advisors again. And what they've done is done something with a tool that they can manipulate with computer numbers. And if they adjust the statistics they put in, they can project out what the demand is going to be. In other words, they might look at that growing aging population. They might look at nurses' retirement, how many nurses are staying in the workforce. They look at the survey, and they jiggle the numbers. And they put them into these tools. And what they've done then with these certain scenarios, and again, the scenario is kind of the setup, the story, they've projected out what we're going to need in terms of new graduates per year. Right now, Wisconsin is putting out, I think in 2011, it was about 3,100. 2010, there you see it was 2,700. Right now, we're just a little over 3,000 grads in Wisconsin. They're estimating by that 2035 number, we're going to be needing to put out over 15,000 grads a year in order to keep the jobs. It's staggering. It's an absolute number. It's like, can this really be happening? But again, we don't have a crystal ball. And all we can do is use science and data and analyze it the best we can to make projections. If we're off the mark a little bit, we might be. There's no doubt about that. But for every reason to believe that the data is telling us, we anticipate a huge, huge amount of shortage. Okay, this is the new grad pipeline right now. The ADN grads are just a little more in number than the Wisconsin grads, and I think I said to you there's about 3,100 a year right now in Wisconsin. and the BSN are just a notch under that. So both of those we have to bump up, and you probably know, and I'm going to go over it in just a little while, that the requirement for the 20, 80% BSN is what the IOM is recommending. So that is what we're shooting for. All right, this is an important slide because it talks about RNs and LPNs who, how much time before they actually want to leave the workforce, for whatever reason. It might not be retirement. It's a lot of reasons. Within 9 years, we expect to lose about 60% of our LPNs. Remember, going back to that original slide of what our nursing home residents might look like. Northern Wisconsin, it's going to be even worse, 63%. Southeastern Wisconsin, a little bit less, 61%. This kind of data is what we are doing at the Wisconsin Center for Nursing when we analyze these big data sets that we get through the state and through your relicensure. And this is why this kind of thing is very important. These surveys need to be taken very seriously and analyzed very carefully. We know from our survey work that within 2 years, we anticipate about 3,000 RNs to leave. Within 4 years, another 9,600. And again, the reasons: retirement, job stress, physical demands. Just by way of a comment, passing comment, one of the things that nursing is going to have to face as a profession is dealing with an extremely obese generation. And when you think about the physical demands that are going to be on nurses as that all plays out historically, I mean, we see it in our kids in school now, as that all plays out, that is going to be a huge, huge job demand on nursing. So I'm sure there will be all sorts of new equipment at that time. But again, that kind of grueling work is what is causing some nurses to have to leave their work. And in 5 to 9 years, another 22%. Now, nursing is not in this alone. We're expecting those kinds of shortages as well as shortages in physicians and other critical providers. And I think that's another reason why the IOM report stresses the whole element of interprofessional collaboration in practice, because we realize that no profession is going to carry the needs of the future by themselves. All right, this is just how that looks in a little pie chart. In 10 or more years, almost 60% of RNs are planning to leave what we call DPC, direct patient care. And that is going to be very impactful. All right, I mentioned new grad turnover. It's higher in the first 3 years of practice, and turnover rates can go as high as 50%. This is really a critical area that requires, I think, schools, education settings to prepare students for realistic practice and what it really is about out there, whether that's through simulation, through actual clinical practice, or whatever the venue is. We need to give students as much clinical experience so they know what they're getting themselves into. The other thing that talks to is the importance of residency programs for nursing, as well as dedicated mentorships with just a guiding mentor at their side that hopefully will grow into a lifelong professional relationship. The HRSA report of 2010 gave statistics that said 40% intend to leave in the first 3 years. 22% will change positions or employers or just try something different. Again, same kinds of reasons: job stress, management, inadequate staffing. Again, what is the reality of what they're going into? In the Wisconsin 2012 RN survey report, we discovered that nurses under the age of 30, almost 50% of them changed jobs within the last year. So that's really what we're facing. But the good news in that is it usually was for reasons of professional promotion or advancement. So that is good news. Highest degrees earned in nursing. In the 2012 survey, we asked the question, what is the highest degree you hold? Now, what that did was it complicated things a little bit, is because we don't essentially have, I'll give you an example. A person may have an MSN, and they would then have checked off Master's in Nursing, but we don't know necessarily that they have a bachelor's. So we can't really pull out separate numbers on the degrees because the question that was asked was, what is the highest degree you hold in nursing? So we can't always back into those answers without a lot of work, I suppose. But we know that the baccalaureate degrees in nursing in Wisconsin are just a little over, like a percentage over what it is nationally. So we're in good shape with a good foundation to keep pushing for more baccalaureate completion by 2020. Where we're really in problems is the slivers that you can't even see on there, and those are the little ones off to the right, and they're just a little tiny blue sliver. Those are our Wisconsin doctorates. And, of course, that is what is teaching our future generations of nursing. So it's very important that we bump up that doctorate preparation. Yeah, question. Go ahead.
We also didn't break out what a doctorate in nursing is. Is that a DNP or a PhD?
Yeah.
Looking at doing that.
It is on the survey. It is broken out. Okay. We didn't include it in this bar, but I got to tell you, I think the bad news about this is this is all of them combined. I'll check that number for you, but I think it is. I think that's DNP, PhD, research, whatever. Yeah, I don't know about that one, but yeah, I think this is a whole bunch. All right. Advanced practice nurses, this is another realm that we would love to see increase. Again, going back to the IOM and the Affordable Care Act and how care might change. There's going to be definitely an increased need for care in the community and that whole shift that will take place. In Wisconsin, we are one of the states that does not have full scope of practice for our advanced practice nurses. And that is legislated as that. And so unless we change that legislation, we are what we are. Although different settings allow different roles for nurse practitioners than some do. Some have fuller practice than others. And so I think with that said, we need to work with our team and make sure that we do use our advanced practice nurses to their full potential because they have a huge contribution to make. And that also speaks to where they can fill in some of that gap where our physician shortages are. And particularly in the rural areas, that might be a huge asset. Wisconsin has 5.7 of our workforce is advanced practice, but that only results in a number of 3,934. So again, lots of room for improvement. So this is the eye in the hurricane slide. And as you can see with the kinds of data I'm telling you, it just has staggering potential impact. Even, you remember the slide about the 15,000 nurses graduating per year by 2035? Even if we said we're over twice wrong on that number and reduce it by a half, and we need to pump out 7,000 nurses a year, that's still twice as many as we are right now. So any improvement is going to be better than staying the same. So this launches into the IOM Future of Nursing report, and you have a short version summary of that. I would encourage you to really dig into that report a little bit. It's probably the strongest support that we have had for nursing ever, historically. It's the most read report in IOM history, and if you know anything about the Institute of Medicine, they crank out a lot of reports, and a lot of good reports. They came out with 4 overarching pillars or key messages that nurses should practice to the full extent of their training, and that relates to what I just said about the APNs. They want nurses to achieve higher levels of education training, and that relates to talking about, more increasing baccalaureates. They want nurses to be full partners with MDs into professional relationships, and they want better workforce planning and data collection. which I think number 4, Wisconsin, we're really excelling at right now. Underneath those pillars are 8 recommendations. Back to removing scope of practice, giving nurses opportunity to lead this change that's taking place, because we all know that nurses have tremendous gifts for using that nursing diagnosis process in any setting. It just works magic. And when you talk about transforming healthcare, applying that solid knowledge base can make any delivery of care better. I believe that to be true, and it's true across the age continuum as well. We need to implement more nurse residency programs. I mentioned increasing BSNs to 80%, doubling the number of doctorates. Again, in Wisconsin, if we doubled that number, it still wouldn't be very many. A lifelong learning, which is, of course, something that we need to promote in our systems where our nurses work. Preparing nurses to lead that change, and again, the infrastructure around workforce data. The Wisconsin Action Coalition is one of 50 in the nation, and the Action Coalitions arose out of the campaign to support the Future of Nursing report. And the Wisconsin Center for Nursing, we were approached to lead the Action Coalition with the Rural Wisconsin Health Cooperative. And if you notice that mix, what they required at the national level was for a nursing organization to be a co-lead in partnership with a non-nursing entity. And again, they want to focus on not everything being nursing-centric. They want us to expand beyond what we have known our entire careers and get more into the big picture of things. So we have done a really good job. We were around the state with regional meetings, and statewide conferences are held every year. This past June 10th, we held a conference in the Dells on nursing diversity. It went really, really well. It was well received. We've gotten a ton of stakeholder groups engaged, and we were successful in getting enough input that enough people felt very strong and reached consensus on how we could approach things here. And I'll tell you more about how that's going to shake down. At the national level, we have these 3 partners engaged in this. The Center to Champion Nursing in America, you may or may not have heard of that. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which is one of the largest philanthropies in the nation and has been hugely supportive to nursing over many, many years. And the 3rd national partner is none other than AARP. Think a little bit why that might be true. Once again, it's this connection to nursing, to a larger advocate group that serves a lot of consumers, and that's only going to get to be bigger. So again, it's nursing building those bridges with non-nursing entities. I would highly encourage any of you to go to the Campaign for Action website. Tremendous amount of valuable resources. Every state has their own Action Coalition page. We keep that populated with content. And also, there is a wonderful community forum that anyone can sign up for. If you've got a great project going on in your school or in your place of work, you can talk about it and share it with the nation. Now, the state action coalitions started the work of implementing the IOM report, but there was one huge shortfall. And of course, the huge shortfall is always money. So RWJ came forth and awarded grants to states that submitted a proposal with a diligent plan that met IOM recommendations and awarded 2-year grants. And we were successful. We were one out of 20 state awards. And we actually were told that we had one of the top 5 proposals. So we were very, very pleased to do that. We had lots of support for our match funding, the Fay Macbeth Foundation in Milwaukee. We had approval of use for some of our DWD workforce grant funding, schools, organizations, and people writing checks. It was a wonderful show of support for this grant. And what we called it was Taking the Lead for Nursing in Wisconsin. The lead standing for leadership, educational advancement, and diversity. So these are the main focus areas of the grant, and I'm just going to walk you through what we're going to try to do in each area. Increasing the leadership in nursing, and in particularly we want to focus on taking a survey in terms of, or providing a survey of where nurses are on boards. And we're not talking about just hospital boards. We're talking about places of influence that nursing knowledge could be very, very valuable for the health of a community, such as a school board. Again, back to that basic application of nursing knowledge and what nurses can provide from their insights in terms of how they've been educated. We know that in Wisconsin, through our data, we know that only 7.7% of nurses are managers, 1.6% are administrators, and 1.1% are executives. We know also that there are leadership trainings going on in the state, but we want to empower those, improve their curricula, and we're also going to be developing a leadership toolkit. So these are some of our key deliverables from that focus area to increase the numbers of nurse leaders. I mentioned the survey, the toolkit, the presence on boards, increasing nursing leadership in training activities, and we always want to be careful to include special direction to traditionally underrepresented groups, the TUG, because way back when in my slides we talked about how poorly diversity was represented in nursing. So we want to make sure that we practice that inclusive excellence and get that fixed. So the next one is educational advancement. Again, going back to the 80% by 2020, we know that Wisconsin RNs are doing pretty well with BSN degrees, but again, we've got another 36% to go before we reach 80% for BSNs. And of course, I talked about the doctorates. A rather disturbing finding is that 67% have no immediate plans to go back to school. And some of that I totally understand, because I remember so well how good it felt to get out of school and start getting a paycheck and doing my thing as a nurse. I remember that so well. But the bigger barriers are what we face in terms of the cost of education right now, time away from family, time commitments, and the rigidity of some of the programming. So we're going to be working with the schools to do more models for a seamless progression. And I know Dr. Crary was talking about you already have some of that in place here. Not all schools do, many do. But even if they do have it in place, we need to pump up the numbers of students that are in these programs. And the BSN at Home online completion program is another program that we want to work strongly with and expand. So we're going to do a baseline survey yet this fall, and then a resurvey in 2 years, and hopefully we'll have seen our numbers come up to at least 15% more. Diversity is the D in LEAD. We talked about the stats as far as nursing diversity and the lack of it in Wisconsin. And we are making some advances, as I said, at the educational level, but we really need to practice more what we're preaching in terms of that inclusive excellence model. WCN had a diversity task force this past year, and it was another major report that we put out with some very high-level recommendations and also guidelines for both educational institutions and also systems to put into place. And the Diversity Learning Collaborative that is coming out of this grant is working on that. Oh, I've got a link to the diversity report there. We held the state conference. I mentioned that. And we're also going to be developing a toolkit for the diverse populations because we know that they do have unique needs and they need to be supported in very specific ways. So we're going to have to develop some tools for people to do that. So, question?
Can I ask you to just share with the students of, they can hear me here tonight, that some of the things that in that diversity task force that specifically that we said that could be done or is being done as best practices that we would like everyone to do, both in the hospital setting and in education.
Yep. Okay. I wish I had it in front of me, but of course, off the top of my head, I know the number one recommendation was that it should be a system-wide approach, and that whether it's in a strategic plan or a mission statement or a core value, that an organization has to embrace diversity as a valued component before the people who work for that organization understand that. So unless it's a top-down kind of approach, you're probably not going to get a lot of buy-in from your employees. So that was one recommendation. Another recommendation was for all schools to provide support services for underrepresented populations. And we found schools in Wisconsin that had very, very little diversity, and because of that, had very, very little services. Well, you always have to ask yourself, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Maybe diverse students don't go there because they know the support services aren't there for them. So there's always these elements of the push and pull of what you can do first to make this happen. So provision of support services, and that's everything from like student associations for diverse populations, certainly, funding support, but sometimes that's the least of it. Mentorship by another student in their own culture or by a faculty member who is that culture. All those kinds of things help strengthen that student's grip on being able to finish the course. And so those kinds of things. We also noted in that report that families had to buy into this and that a student can't do it alone without a supportive family. So a way to loop the family into that support network was very important. Another recommendation, I'm going down my list here in my head, another recommendation was to keep better statistics on underrepresented groups. We found that we would have health systems say to us, well, yeah, we know we have some diversity here. Of course we would hire diversity. But then the question becomes, do you recruit diversity? Do you target diversity to actually pull in? Do you go out and look for it?
I think we talked about what we heard is that they may originally come, but they don't have the mentorship there when they get hired, and they leave quickly because it's not there. So what the students here in this course who are expected to be in a stronger leadership role, embracing those people who are there, and we used for the diversity task force, we used the definition of diversity. It's not just ethnic or cultural.
Right.
It's more than that. It's gender. It's
poverty, rural, urban,
personal life choices, those kind of things, and to really step up to the plate and be a mentor to someone who is perhaps a different culture or ethnicity or other choices, who is diverse from your own.
Exactly. So the kinds of things I said in terms of supporting students so they get through school also holds true for a brand new nurse employee that needs that same kind of support. That's correct. And the keeping better data, we actually we did a cross-sampling in this task force of about 17 different health systems, public, private schools, ADN, baccalaureate. We really mixed it up, but we got a good cross-section of what was going on in Wisconsin. But we had people saying, yeah, we keep track of who passes NCLEX, but we don't necessarily separate out if it was a minority that passed it. So the importance of looking at the data, again, to help you strategize and go back to, you know, if I knew that 90% of my diverse students were failing, I would do something to change that. And unless you know, what's the expression, you don't know what you don't know. So you really have to look at data to help inform those choices.
I think that pretty much covers it.
There was 5. I'm missing one in the middle. But maybe it'll come to me. So multiple approaches are going to be required in order to fix this and to keep a stable workforce. We're going to have to look at different educational models to do this. And I think nurses in leadership are going to have to be key in this, because we know from a fact what was true when I went to nursing school is true today. And that is 9 times out of 10, maybe not that many, but they're teaching to a medical model, an acute care model, a clinical model. And unless we do more to show that community population health approach, you know, we're not going to get the nurses with that expertise.
These students just last semester had a community wellness course.
Cool.
And even though they may have had a little bit of that in their associate degree program, we expanded significantly on that and how to approach providing care in that setting.
Great. And really, population health is a whole different science. It's looking at individual, family, system, community. It's looking at the needs of a population as a whole and how all of that can come together. It's an interesting science. I love it.
To hear you say that, because I was preaching that last semester.
Yeah. Well, that was always my thing. Okay, so we need to recruit and successfully transition new nurses through support, whether they're a diverse nurse or not. We need to double that nursing pipeline as a minimum. We need academic progression in partnership with employers and schools. The schools, if the hospital systems or the healthcare systems are requiring baccalaureate preparation, which some of them are already, then we need to work together with the schools and say, how can we get everybody up to speed? Innovative partnerships with the adoption and spread of best practices, and I think the Diversity Task Force is a good idea, or a good example of that, because we really did pull out some nice practices. And the last bullet I want to touch on is something that is getting, it's concerning right now. Maintaining quality. You may know that there are a lot of schools coming to the surface right now from all over the map offering a quick fix to getting a degree. Some are very good, some are accredited, some are not. I think the quality issue of how we're educating our students and how we're advancing these degrees is critical. And I went to a national conference just a few weeks ago, and there was Dr. Peter Bierhaus is a renowned data guy for nursing workforce. And he said, it's not all about quantity. Yes, we need the numbers, but he said another just as large concern is the issue of quality right now. So just something to keep in mind as we go along. We would hope that these are all about bright tomorrows if we do it right with improved access and care. We want to decrease health disparity and have people all have an equal chance to good care. We want to improve our patient outcomes, and we know that more education, better interprofessional approaches, there's a lot of good data on improved patient outcomes with that. And overall, it's all about making Wisconsin a healthier place to live. So what I would direct you to is certainly our website as a resource for great nursing workforce data. Lots of reports. We have just linked with the Wisconsin Hospital Association. They have a brand new site for BSN completion programs. It talks about cost, tuition, type of program, length of program. It's kind of one-stop shopping for BSN completion in our state. So they did a survey and gathered information from all the schools, so you should be up to speed. But certainly, it's a great resource for ADNs who need to complete. And also, we've got a lot of activities going on with the Action Coalition and the learning collaboratives that are in those focus areas of the grant that I mentioned. We have an info line on our website, and we have a listserv of now approaching about 800, which I started when I started this position 3 years ago. And I'm doing it to build a way to mass communicate with people across the state about issues in nursing, getting our reports out, if we're offering an event, all things like this, the listserv is used for. So if anyone needs to be on that, they're welcome. And also, just as a parting comment, please like us on Facebook. That's important now, too. And if anyone would like to contact me directly, I've provided my information for you and my email and my phone number. So that's all I would have today, unless there are other questions. All right. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Judi, for coming and sharing your knowledge with the students. I'm very appreciative of your time.